welcome back to the Squats and Sushi podcast.
We are your hosts, Annabel and
Sammy, and we are finally back. I feel like we've been away for such a long time, probably since like December.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're finally back. We're not going to leave, promise. So we thought that we would start off this episode just by giving you guys a bit of an update as to where we are, kind of what the plans are for the podcast moving forward. And then there is going to be a surprise closer to the end of the podcast. So if you stay around, you'll find out what it is.
I love it.
So, should we start with you, Annabel?
Good.
So Annabel, as you guys know, Annabel competed in September in her first pro show.
Mm-hmm.
And she's now in the depths of her off season. So let's have a little update on what you've been doing over the last few months. How you found coming out of that reverse. I think that's the last time you kind of spoke about it.
Did we talk about me coming out of the dieting phase?
I think so. Last time we spoke, you said that you were having some issues with adhering to the plan, and it was like that whole post-show phase, which is very challenging sometimes. So
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess we could start there. Right after the near pro, it was very difficult to hop back on plan. I think it wasn't even about the food. I think I just had like the post-show blues, and it really hit me hard, right? Because I wasn't expecting coming off of that show and not competing again. I really thought that I was going to do well, I was going to place well, I was going to continue competing, Olympia, blah, 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 blah. Everything was like, planned in my head. And then it wasn't that, and I just crashed. It was bad. And then that led to emotional eating, maybe a bit. It wasn't, I think it was just a handful of times that I admitted to you that, I overate or something like that. But it was a good 2 months until then. I finally started feeling myself again.
Yeah. I also feel like you were dieting for so long that, to be honest, like no matter what your mindset was, it would have still been,
to happen.
Yeah, it would have still been very challenging because your body was just so deprived and constantly changing the competition dates. I remember even after they moved it to autumn.
August. Yeah. They pushed it against September.
Yeah, so I think it was a lot. And obviously, in addition to the whole COVID situation, having to constantly change your training environment from training with like a pair of dumbbells, in your living room to then training at a kind of home gym setup. Did you even get a chance to train at Bev's? I think you did for a bit. I feel like you did.
Yeah, a little bit.
So you literally
2
had
weeks
like
before, yeah,
you had so much going on. So in all honesty, I think, having that time off just allowed you to kind of reset yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So then coming off of that, just started bumping up my food, focused on training, performance. And when did we enter a mini cut phase? Because we were pushing up until the mini cut, right?
Yeah. So originally Annabel was meant to go on holiday to Brazil.
Oh, yes. I forgot about that. I was supposed to go to Brazil in March for like 3 weeks.
Yeah. And that was, originally I think it was in January you were meant to go, and then it got postponed to March. So we decided to do a mini cut phase. I think it was around January, end of January.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we decide, like, how do you know when to start a mini cut? Like, when is it appropriate? So it was at a point when Annabel felt comfortable with her food. So she didn't feel the need to like eat extra food. She felt
no food focus.
There was no food focus. Her training was in a good place as well, because you don't want to go into deficit if you're having some issues with your training and you're not able to progress in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
So everything was just in a really good place. I think like your sleep, your lifestyle factors, everything was in a really good place. So we thought, why don't we do a quick mini cut?
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously post show, Annabel did have a few occasions where she ate out and she accumulated a bit of extra fat, not like massive, but we wanted to do a bit of a cleanup phase just so that not only she feels better within herself, but also we just set her up better for the rest of the year. Yeah, so we did that, and I think it was very successful.
It really was.
Yeah,
Because
and
wearing
you
them now is awesome.
yeah, and you've been keeping that weight off. So obviously we slowly increased your calories. We're still being very careful with the increases because we don't really want to go into another dieting phase anytime soon.
Yeah,
Because obviously when you're spending time in a dieting phase, you're not really making as many improvements as you could be.
correct.
So yeah, I think everything now.
So now I have a question for Coach Sammy. What is your plan for the rest of this year? So now we just came out of this cut. You still want to push food up, but conservatively because you don't want to put on extra body fat.
Yeah.
What are your plans from here on?
So it depends obviously when we decide to start your prep, but
Yeah.
from what we've said, probably around January time.
Start.
Yeah. It depends what shows again, because if you want to do a show closer to home, sometimes they might not be when you want them to be. So it might be in like April rather than closer to September.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so I guess what we're gonna do is just push for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say push, I don't mean like body weight push.
Yeah, I was
It's
about to
like,
ask you to clarify that.
yeah, so it's more of just pushing her calories up, making sure she's progressing within her training, and then just reassess. I think it's important to reassess every so often because you might have, a plan for the next 6 months, but it depends how the body responds.
Of course.
But there won't be any dieting phases or anything like that. I personally don't think that's a good idea to do when you're this close to your prep. I think if your prep was in 2 years' time, there's definitely room to do a
That
cutting
there's work.
phase,
Yeah.
like a prep before the prep. But if we keep you where you are now, there's no real reason to do that.
Yeah.
So it's all about just building more muscle, really.
No, it's pretty awesome. I've never been at this body composition at this weight
Yeah,
before,
yeah,
so it's nice.
yeah.
Last question that I have for you, and then we're gonna switch on to you. um, is there a number that you have in mind as a coach, or do you never attach yourself to numbers? Like, okay, at the end of the year, I want Annabelle to be here. Do you have like?
So I think it's important obviously to understand that numbers are always changing,
Yeah,
and like you said, what you look like now at this weight is not what you looked like a year ago, for example.
right.
So with keeping that in mind, I know that you're probably going to be around where you are now up to 65.
Okay.
And if you stay at this body composition, obviously your weight should go up because if you're building muscle, it should go up. But yeah, I don't like really attaching to scale weight, but I think it's good to use it. If I know that last year you competed and you weighed 56 kilos, that's a good number for me to go by, because when we're in prep, I'm like, I know that she was 56. I'm not saying she's going to be the same weight this year, but it's good for me to know what she will look like at that weight
Yeah.
around.
Right.
Same with off season, like it's good to have an idea of what sort of condition you are at what weight.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously it's a constantly changing number,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think everything for you is in a really good place. I think this is the best position you've been in your off season.
100%. It's
So it's
awesome
really,
to just be back in the gym.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
and at Bev's. And they
Yeah.
just lifted the masks like a month ago, so that's good too.
Yeah, I can't believe you guys had to train in masks. We didn't have to do that, luckily.
That's crazy.
But honestly, if we did, I think I would still like put it to here and be like,
Yeah.
but with regards to myself,
Yes,
so
you were in
I've literally had
Russia sledding with some dogs. Tell
yeah.
us about that.
So I've literally had the biggest roller coaster. As you guys know, I've been injured, and the injury happened in end of 2019. And then January, February, March of 2020, I started to try and like ease myself back into the gym. And I didn't really accept that I was injured. I just thought, oh, yeah, I just need to take a couple months off the gym and I'll be fine. Um, I'm just doing a bit of a recap if you
Yeah,
guys
yeah.
forgot. Yeah. And then basically, around March time, I started working with someone who was helping me like fix the issue, but that didn't really go to plan. And then COVID started. So during the COVID time in England, we had like a 4 month, I think it was 4 months, 4 month lockdown. I didn't actually have access to the gym. So basically, I just didn't train really. I did some rehab here and there, but it was nothing crazy. And I did lose quite a lot of size, but what can you do? Like everyone was in that same situation. And I thought to myself, like, this is probably the best time to be injured because it's kind of forced me to go away from continuing training in the gym, repeating the same movement patterns, and just re-injuring myself. This is the reason. I'm going to take a slight tangent. There's a reason why people get injured and then they get the exact same injury again, but maybe in 6 months or in a year. It's because all they did was reduce intensity, but they didn't change what initially caused the injury. Does that make sense?
It does.
So, yeah, so basically, lockdown then ended. I kind of eased myself back in the gym, but I wasn't doing the same sort of stuff that I was doing before lockdown. I was trying to do things that obviously don't put my hip into deep hip flexion. So I was doing quite basic things
So
like
you finally figured out the root cause of it. It's the deep flexion, and then you tried to avoid movements.
it wasn't the deep hip flexion isn't what caused it, but it was making it worse.
Understood.
I'll explain what the issue is later, but basically I stopped putting myself in the deep hip flexion movements and started with the basics like leg extension, hamstring curl, all of those kind of movements just to get some contractions into the muscles, because honestly, like I forgot how to even have that muscle mind connection. So I just wanted to do simple movements where I can really focus on the contractions, right? And then around October time, I decided to start working with a coach again, because I wanted someone there. And it's nice to have someone support you, especially when you're just constantly second guessing yourself.
Yeah.
And he has been through a similar sort of injury as I have. So it was nice to have someone who understands, how it feels, like what you should do, what you shouldn't do. And then lockdown started again in England. So I flew to Belarus, which is where my mom lives.
Belarus, I'm sorry I said Russia. Oh, how are you not upset at me?
No, it's fine. Honestly, it's like almost the same thing. Like they're right next to each other.
Yeah.
And they speak Russian there. So
right.
Yeah, so I spent like 3.5 months there.
Yeah.
And it was nice. I mean, the gym there compared to what you get in like the US or in the UK obviously is not the same. But I was really thankful that I even had access to something, because everyone here in the UK didn't have access to anything unless they had home equipment. So I just spent doing very similar things that I was doing prior to this second lockdown. So again, leg extension, hamstring curl, lunge type movements, making sure I don't go too low, things like that. And then finally, I got back to the UK. Should I update what I was doing in Belarus? Yeah, I was doing loads of fun stuff. I was doing like dog sledding. I basically lived on a farm, so it was really nice to just like kind of get away from reality, I guess. Yeah. And that's another reason why
the internet connection. Yes,
yeah,
we could use that as an excuse.
Actually the reason why, because the internet there was awful. Like when I do a client check-in, it usually takes like less than a minute to upload a video, like 30 seconds. There, it sometimes took like 40 minutes. It was
up to an hour. I remember you told me
it was so ridiculous. Anyway, so then I got back to the UK, and I started going back to my gym. And over this kind of time period, I started to notice something. And I noticed that I'm now getting stronger on all of my lifts, but I'm going back to the same movement pattern. So nothing's changed. I basically lost muscle and strength, and now I'm basically going back to what I was doing. And that's not going to fix the injury, is it?
How do you know that you're going back to the same movement patterns?
Because I haven't changed the way I move. Like the only way to change that is to actively be changing it, like doing the movement and thinking like I need to do this, or looking at what is weaker and strengthening that to try and like fix the way you're moving.
Right. Well, do
So
you know what's wrong exactly and like what you need to do to
yeah,
change to
this
move
is the
on?
thing, is that there's like so many things involved. As you know, the human body is very confusing and it's very long. Everything is connected. So I start to get really frustrated in the gym over the last few weeks because I could really feel these imbalances. Like I can't feel my right lat contract. When I squat, I can feel one quad and the other hamstring, and like you just feel very like out of balance.
Yeah.
And yeah, so then I basically thought, right, I'm going to prioritize just moving well. I don't even, now that I'm back in the gym and I've kind of got some muscle back, I feel fine, I feel confident. I want to just fix myself. So after loads of research and talking to some people I trust in the industry, they gave me the details of this one guy, and he did a 1 hour screening session with me
Mm-hmm.
and basically looked at everything from the feet all the way up. And he pointed out a lot of things that are not the way they should be. For example, like I can't, I can rotate right like easily, but when I go left, this is the furthest I can go. Whereas here, I can literally go like that, right? So that's one thing. So if you're unable to rotate, what happens is like when you squat, you're obviously like more biased towards this way,
Or
right?
the
So,
side. Mm-hmm.
but all of this stems from the feet, the way I walk, and it could be from the ankle injury I had. So it's all basically connected, and he's
Yeah.
given a rehab protocol. So I'm just currently working on that. I'm trying not to do anything in the gym that's going to do the opposite effect. So there are certain movements which I've removed because I feel like they were making things worse, like hack squat. It's a compression. It really compresses you, and like I have quite a lot of issues with my lower back being very compressed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying not to do those kind of movements while I'm doing this rehab. Um, so yeah, it is a long process, as you can see. Like this started ages ago, and I'm still like not
You
100%.
said you said Seb had a similar injury to you, or it wasn't similar.
So his injury was different to me, as in like it wasn't like the same thing didn't cause it, but he also had a hip issue
Okay.
that
How
would
did
always
he get past it?
flare up. So well, what he did is he actually did loads of rehab work. He got a coach that really looks at his movement patterns.
Mm-hmm.
So assessing the way he moves, he's fixed his movement patterns, because if you look at how he squats now versus like 2 years ago, it's like two different people.
Okay.
And he's learned to squat what fits his body. Because
Yeah.
there's so many different ways to squat: wide, narrow, low bar, high
I
bar,
get yeah.
you know engage, like the way that when you come down, like are you collapsing forward, are you going back? There's so many things that are going to influence it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so he's managed to, sometimes it still flares up, like he can't sleep on that side, but
Oh
it's
wow.
way better.
Okay.
And it just take honestly, it's one of those things that just takes time. And I think people, the reason they just keep getting injured, or once they get injured they're unable to come out of it, is because they don't actually actively fix the problem you know it's
It's just
all.
hard, but you've been through so many. What are they called? Physical therapists, right? And
Yeah,
only this last one is really able to assess you.
yeah, this
Right?
guy
Not
definitely.
everybody knows what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the problem with a lot of physios is that they can fix the issue, but it's gonna keep coming back, because you need to look at what has caused it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? So it's like, look, if I can right now go to a physio and be like, my hip hurts, they're gonna go, what exercise are you doing? What hurts? Oh, when I do squats. Okay, let's remove squats, yeah, and let's do this instead.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, the pain's gone now. But the thing is, it's going to come up again. Maybe, if you never do squats again, it might not be as bad, but you're going to do some other movement that's going to be similar to a squat, and it's going to come up.
Yeah.
So that's why instead you should go, okay, so the squat is causing that. Let's have a look at how you squat. Oh, you're rotating because your adductor isn't working. We need to strengthen the adductor, you know, stuff like that.
Like
And
that.
that's what I liked about this guy, is that he really looks at everything. And, you know, from like one of the things he pointed out is like one of my toes, the way it comes off the ground is different to the other leg. And like that sounds like as if that's going to make a difference. You're going
Massive difference. Yeah.
but it does, because that is going to influence everything else, the way you move, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people fix issues in a standing position. But how often do we do stuff when we're just standing? Like, we do so many things on a day-to-day basis that involve movement. So you need to fix movement, because if you fix it standing and then you go about your normal activities, your body's going to compensate again.
It's going to go back. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have to look at it from a standing position, but also from a movement position. Like, so he assessed when I walk, I don't, I don't rotate left when I walk. And it's interesting because my right heel always like scratches the inside of my left leg. Not scratches, but like, so I'm walking and it does that. It like, how can I don't know how you describe this movement.
Braces up against. Yeah.
Yeah, it basically touches. But the left never does that to the right. And it's because when I'm walking, I'm kind of like this. So when my legs come off the ground, instead of being straight, it's like this, and then this one goes like that.
Okay, so how are we addressing this problem?
So to
What
fix,
he told you to do?
yeah, so he's given me, for now, I have 2 different rehab days. One is focused on glutes and core.
Okay.
And the other one is focused on my feet and core. So those are the main things I'm working on right now. And then obviously once we do that, we'll then add more stuff in. You can't just like try and do everything at once. You know, you have to start with very basic stuff.
That's the problem. And a lot of people think that rehab is like 3 weeks. And that's no.
Especially if you've developed something over years, you can't fix it in like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
No way.
Mm-hmm.
Your body is going to try and go back to what it's comfortable with.
Do you think everyone should get checked by, let's say, this guy that you went to, even if they don't have an injury, just to get assessed and to see if everything is fine before an injury pops up?
I think it is very beneficial. And the more I learn, like I'm currently doing a course now, right? It's actually so interesting how a lot of these things are genetic. And it's like, so I have big quads. And the guy explained to me, and I've learned it on the course as well, why I have that. And it's not because I train them harder than any other muscle. It is a genetic compensation that's happened. And my body just uses them more than, you know, all my other muscles in my legs.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very interesting how we're all so different. And I think if you want to get the most out of your training, it is so important to actually get screened. And that is something I want to start including in my consultations, is actually to screen a client, because how can I write a plan if I don't even know how they move? And I can ask them questions like, do you have any pain anywhere? Or, you know, have you noticed any issues with any exercises? But the thing is, they might have that, but until I see, I can't go, oh, that's why it's like that. That's why they have issues with the squats. It's because she's not, you know, engaging her core. Her stance is wrong or something like that, you know? Mm-hmm. So I think if you want to get the most out of your training, and obviously with you send me so many videos that it's pretty much a screening in itself.
Right.
But it's very important for your coach to at least see how you train, because a screening, obviously I'm not a physio, so I wouldn't screen like a physio, but something that you could do is just see people's ranges of motion. Do they have any restrictions anywhere? How is their internal and external rotation of both their arms and their legs? You know, do they have weakness in their core? Ask them to squat. Are they a knees forward type person, or are they a hips back type person? Mm-hmm. Can they hinge? Because something I found out 2 weeks ago is that I can't hinge. And I always was like, what? I thought that was one of my best things. He said, Sammy, you even use your quads when you RDL, because my knees go forward, and like, it's so weird how I just do that. And I never knew that. I never really realized it. But now I think it's also because I've been out the gym for so long. Some of the like hip thrusts, they feel very foreign to me.
Yeah.
So I think a bit of it is that. But yeah, basically, I think it's important for everyone to get screened so that you can get the most out of your training.
Are you currently with anybody right now? Like, is anybody coaching you, or are you by
No.
yourself? Okay.
So I've decided that I don't want to be coached right now. I have some reasons, like financial reasons. I'm trying to save up to actually get a place for myself.
Yeah.
So apart from that, so it's no like hard feelings, right? Like circumstances change in your life. But I also want to use this time to almost just really connect. Like, this is going to sound like spiritual, and it's not. I'm just saying I want to connect with myself because only I know what feels good and what doesn't feel good in the gym, right? So a coach can give me a program, but there's no point in me going back every week and going like, this didn't feel good, I'm going to do this instead. This didn't feel good. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what's the point? You want to work with a coach when they can tell you what to do and you're able to just go and execute it. But there's no point if you're kind of on the back end of an injury. And I think I did need someone there to kind of get out of that dark place that I was in.
Yeah.
But now I'm in a place where I'm like, okay, I feel good. My hip doesn't really hurt, but I just want to get to a point where I move very well.
Yes.
And then I
And then,
consider, yeah.
yeah.
And also my goals have slightly changed. So at the moment, I'm not thinking about competing or anything like that, at least for this short-term period.
Yeah.
And I just want to get to a place where my body is like bulletproof. So
Yeah.
I'm really strong. I feel good. I move well. I don't have a weak point in my body. Because there's loads of things that I can name as my weaknesses, especially because I've been doing so much bodybuilding over the last 7 years that, you go into a machine, you don't really need to use your core. So my core is one of my weaknesses. Um, so that's kind of what I want to focus on right now. And then potentially in the future, we'll see what happens.
I love that.
Yeah. But this is probably going to sound really cliche, but for me, what's more important is like, I love prepping people. I love coaching people, right? And
Yeah.
for me, that is actually more important because the thing is like, if I'm going to be competing myself, right? I'm the kind of person that if I'm going to compete, I want to do very well.
Yeah.
And it's like, am I really going to be able to prep someone like Annabel, if I have limited energy? I'm sure it's possible, but I don't want to compromise my quality of my service for my clients if I'm
Yeah.
trying to achieve something like a pro card. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll
That's
see.
hard. That makes me sad.
It's hard, but at the same time, like, the stage is always there, like you said. I think
Yes.
I'm glad that I've been able to kind of wake up and go like, no, Sammy, deal with the injury.
Yes.
And in the future, when you're good, I'll just go, okay, I'm gonna do a competition.
Yep.
But it's the stage is always going to be there. I'm not exactly that old. So and even if I was, you can do like masters. So
Yeah.
that's kind of
And
where
plus,
I'm at.
you seem very, very focused on just Shaped by Sammy, your business right now, and
Yeah,
improving quality, doing courses, all of that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many things that I want to kind of rebrand. And it's so difficult to try and do all of that if you're also at the same time trying to do a course, and then if you have things within your own training you're trying to change. So I think it's really important just to set like three things and then just focus on them, and
Focus on
then
that.
once that's completed you can look to do something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically where I'm at. I'll obviously will both keep you updated throughout the process every so often, but sorry if you guys found this very long.
I know we were supposed to limit it to 30 minutes of our catch up, but we always go off.
Yeah. It's good though, because I think it's important also to, talk about these things because everyone goes through them, like injuries or coming out of post show, like those are things that everyone goes through.
Yeah.
So, Right. So, is there anything else that you want to update?
No.
Are you
That
doing more posing now, by the way? Are you like
Oh yes, I am. All of the sudden, I have like 2 girls a week.
that's so
It's
good.
awesome.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I
you're
po-
doing
the first girl that I posed gave me the confidence that I could actually do this because she won her show.
that's so sick. Yeah.
Yeah. And we had
Yeah.
like 5 posing sessions together. And
I think
then
I know which one it is. Yeah, I think
abs. She was in a red bikini.
it was one of the first girls, yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the first girls.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah.
after that, people just started coming in. So now I'm focusing on that. I'm
Yeah.
trying to get more posing sessions done with other IFBB pros so I can
Yeah.
constantly learn and just apply that to others.
And also I think it's important for yourself. Like you can't just go to one, it's like with coaching as well. I think that it's really good to get different experiences
Yeah.
and you can then make your own posing style from that. Because if you only go to one posing coach and you kind of use her style, it might not have something that you're missing out on that someone else has. Do you know what I mean?
That's true.
So I think it's really good for you to, go and get
Keep trying. Yeah,
yeah. And also it's good networking as well,
that's very true. Good.
Right. So we're gonna jump into the
A little surprise.
into the Q&A portion of this.
Slide right over. Let me introduce you guys, the baby of Shaped by Sammy and On a Mission. This is Danita. My best friend, my training partner for a very long time, and also a client.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? I think it's kind of interesting as well.
Get comfortable.
Is this too tall?
I think you're fine.
I think it's perfect.
Okay.
Hi everyone, I am Dimitra. Annabel is my coach for a year and a half.
Year and a
almost
half.
2 years.
Since I came back.
Yeah, so almost 2 years. I started training when I was 17, so in 2017.
Can you move the microphone slightly closer?
I'll keep it in the middle.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
So I started training in 2017. I started working out with someone who was a competitor in National Federation. And then we kind of like parted ways a little bit, like life got in the way, busy. So then I started training alone. And then I joined Bevs and I met Annabel, and she's been my coach for like a year and a half, almost 2.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
It's been incredible. I love her because she really trusted me when you first came to me.
Oh, yes.
She was in a place where she was doing like an hour of cardio every single day.
So
her food was so low. Her training was all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we just increased her food. How much did you gain?
I gained like
40 pounds.
40 pounds. It was hard. People were calling me fat all the time.
But it was all for a reason because now she's
at a much better place.
Incredible.
A much better place.
Yeah.
So
doing a little bit of cardio. Steps are super low, like 6,000, 6.5, right? And food is high.
Yeah, that's really good.
And her training is incredible. She came to me, she wanted to be a bikini competitor. You want to step on stage. Yep. But now she has found a love for powerlifting. Yeah. And I don't know, I think a powerlifting meet is in the future before a show.
100%,
yeah.
To be honest, I'm tempted as well to do powerlifting.
Really?
That's really cool.
You're gonna do it too.
I would love to. That's a question that I wanted to ask you. Do you think that someone can power lift and be a bikini competitor or a competitor at the same time?
I mean, this is how I would answer any question where someone's asking about like 2 different things. I think if you really want to be good at something, you have to pick that specific thing and just focus on it.
On one.
I think it's very rare where people do 2 things and they're really good at both of them. Unless you're someone who just wants to kind of dip your toes in like different things and be like, maybe not the elite top, but you want to like, be okay, or maybe like good, then sure, you could definitely get away with it. But they're 2 very, although they are similar, they're actually very different. So the similarity is that you're trying to get stronger. right, across a certain amount of time.
Mhm.
But, you know, with bikini competitions, your whole goal is to get as lean as possible. Whereas with powerlifting, that is actually kind of counterproductive. You want to actually be at a body fat where you're functioning at your best. There is some element of dieting to it as well. Like I was actually having this discussion with Seb, and we can save that for the podcast. But I do think any sport that you do, it's very important to be on top of your nutrition because that's essentially what's going to fuel you.
Right.
So when you hear powerlifters, people always think big, fat,
Junk food. Yeah.
But in all honesty, if they really paid attention to their food and they stayed like at a good body fat, they would perform way better.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
That does.
Someone actually came up to me in the gym and they were like, I know you're doing powerlifting, but please don't be that person that just eats whatever and becomes super fat.
It's such a stereotype thing with powerlifting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Right. So should we get into the questions?
Do you have a list? Are they in your head?
The first one is injuries.
Okay.
I know, Sammy, you dealt with a hip injury.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had a hip injury. When did this start? Back in December?
Yeah. She couldn't squat.
I couldn't even it got to the point where I couldn't body weight squat. It was so painful. I was just leaning forward. So I feel like that set me back a lot. Mindset definitely was so bad because I spent so many months building up food, muscle, all this stuff, and then boom, it's like everything's gone.
Yeah.
So now that I've been going to physical therapy and starting to squat again and deadlift and doing
everything back to normal.
How long do you think it takes to go back to where you were, muscle-wise and everything?
So first of all, how long did you like how much time did you take away from training?
I didn't take any time completely away from training, but I spent time not squatting with the barbell or going to physical therapy for 3 months. I'm still going.
Yeah. The guy's a power lifter too, so he went through, he's not just working on her, he's looking at her movement and he fixed the way that she moves. Yeah, so that was pretty good. And he even said to not stop training, right?
Yeah.
He's the one who told us that she should continue training. Yeah.
This is another thing which people get wrong, and it's really frustrating for me because the amount of advice I received of stop training is ridiculous. And think about it this way. If you're someone who's been training for a long time, your CNS is so used to higher intensity. So the only way to actually fix something, you have to train it at that same higher intensity because that's what your body's used to. Does that make sense? So to fix your issue, you're going to have to use those same weights, but you need to change the way you're moving and move in a safe way.
Yeah.
With regards to time, so I think, of course, as most questions, is very individual, but it is a lot easier to rebuild muscle than it is to build in the first place, because once you build muscle, it actually stays there. It just kind of shrinks, but the actual like muscle is still there. So I think the most important thing is to try and maximize everything. So make sure you're getting enough sleep, make sure you're eating enough protein, all of that kind of stuff. And it should take you, like if you took 3 months off of like proper training, as long as you're getting stronger, progressively overloading, it should be back by maybe half of that time. Might take 3 months, you know, it really depends. And also look at the weights you're doing. So, you know, if back then you were, let's say, squatting 60 kilos, but you're now on 30, then you're going to expect to see some loss of muscle because your body is like, I don't really need this extra muscle because I'm not putting it under the same sort of load. But that shouldn't then encourage you to just forget about form and just lift the 60 kilos, because if you get better technique and then you squat 60, you'll actually look even better. Does that make sense?
Because then you're activating everything.
Yeah. So I wouldn't put like a number on it. I just think that it's good that you're in the position you're now, because you're going to your 60 kilos now will look so much better than it was before, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
What did you say?
How about with like a cutting phase? For me, I know.
Do you mind putting the microphone a bit closer? Because I just hope that.
Okay.
Just in case, yeah.
What do you mean?
Okay, so when entering a cutting phase, I know it's different for everyone how long it takes to drop weight, or everyone's body is different, but I know for me it takes a very long time to notice.
Her body doesn't respond. It takes time. Like
when we
if we make a change, how long did it?
Back when quarantine first started, when we entered the cut, we didn't notice it like a drop in weight till 3 weeks after.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we're experiencing that now as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
so your question is like, why does this happen, or like how?
Yeah, she wants to know like, why is it so difficult? Like if she compares to me, as soon as I make a change, I see it immediately. Whereas for her, it takes some more time, and she needs to be really consistent in order for it to drop.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, obviously this question is very individual, but I'm just going to try and give you as much kind of insight as to what I can, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, I think someone's history is very important. So, and I can use this example on myself as well, because when I first kind of got into lifting, I struggled a lot with my body weight. And it was because I spent almost a year in a paleo diet. So I was on very low calories. I like even damaged my thyroid. I had like scans done on my thyroid and they found like some issues with it. I completely lost my period. And I was just broken. Like my hormones were just not working, right? And so after that, I rebounded, and my body was just like, no, I'm not going to lose weight. And like, that's why it is true that it's calories in versus calories out, but that's like on the most basic level. It's finding out how many calories do you need, and your body will need different calories depending on where it's at and what its current maintenance is. So if you came out of, that's why if you've come out of a prep, why do you gain weight on like calories that usually would be your maintenance calories? And it's because your metabolism can down regulate. And our bodies were created for survival. So it's going to do everything it needs to in order to preserve energy, right? So if you have a history, like what you said, you were doing like 1 hour of cardio, low calories. I don't know how long that lasted for. How long did that last for?
At least a year.
Yeah. So it's going to take you time to recover from that. And sorry for the like asking the detailed question, but did you lose your period during this time?
I did.
Yeah. So that is a huge hormonal effect, especially on a female. And it will take time to recover from that. And I know it's really frustrating because especially when you go to a gym and you see like probably other people training, you're like, why can't I look like that? And I was there myself.
Yeah.
You just read her mind. That the stupidest thing you can do is what most people would do in this situation, which is like, I'm just going to diet more. I'm just going to continue dieting until I get there.
Right.
But realistically, you just need to view yourself right now as a performance athlete, and performance not only from like a training perspective, but like from a body functioning perspective. So make sure your periods are in a good place. For a female, that's a really good kind of tool to use. You know, make sure you're getting enough sleep, make sure you're not overtraining. And putting your body under like loads of stress, because again, if you're overtraining, that is a stress on the body. Making sure that you're staying healthy, you know. And over time, my advice in your situation would to be like just slightly over maintenance, because you still want to, if you're at maintenance, it still can sometimes be a deficit because your maintenance is an always changing number, you know.
Yeah.
So in yours, because you're not coming out of like a fat loss or anything like that, I don't think it's necessary for you to be at maintenance. I think you should be in like a slight surplus, and then just reassess yourself like every so often, like once a month, maybe. You don't need to be so on top of it because you're not in like a fat loss phase. So I think once a month, if you take pictures, and don't get too tied to your physique either, because it can be very like detrimental to you. So that's why I'm saying once a month, and then just look at how you're responding, and you might even find that you need to increase your calories because your body.
Possibly. You know why we pulled back a little bit, because what were the issues? We actually built her food up to a really good place. You were what? How many carbs were you having? Do you remember?
250.
Yeah, 250.
Yeah.
But then you were having digestive issues.
Sleep was also very off because of work.
Sleep was off, and then your appetite too, right?
Yeah,
she felt like she was forcing it. So I was like, okay, maybe we should pull back.
Yeah, I felt like I was force feeding. I didn't want to have my meals. I mean, I do eat very plain. It's always like chicken and rice, but I wasn't ever hungry anymore.
Whereas before she was always like, I need more. I'm so hungry.
I started gaining like 2 pounds a week. It was very strange. Like
with low appetite, you were gaining weight.
Yeah, because I was like, I guess, forcing the food down because it had, like I was trying to hit those macros every single day. And I was just increasing weight. One day I would be 123. The next day I would be up 2 pounds. And I'm like, okay, something's
yeah, and it got
wrong.
up to like 127. So I was like, okay, this is very weird. In a month, we didn't change anything. Cardio steps, everything was the same food. She's experiencing all these symptoms, but she just spiked up like close to 10 pounds.
Okay, and when you looked at your physique, do you do waist measurements as well, or no?
We don't, just scale weight. And I did feel like always watery, bloated. I felt like big. I didn't feel comfortable. Like I wear scrubs for work. They were really tight on me. I'm like, I can't do this. Like,
yeah.
And also it was hard even like training. I mean, I also had that injury, my hip injury. Like I didn't feel comfortable when I would train.
It was a lot.
Yeah. The thing is, like, just by the sounds of it, you had loads of things going on. So your body's not just going to be like, you see like a straight picture, because there's so many factors. Like you stop training. Like when I stopped training, I started experiencing issues with my period. And I think that's because my hormones have changed, because I used to carry a lot more muscle. So perhaps I had a different amount of hormones circulating in my body. And then after those 8 months off, like literally my periods just got really irregular. And I think that's all to do with the fact that my lifestyle really changed, So I think, how was your period during this time?
It was off. It would come early, then it would like
exactly. So that just
heavier than normal.
Way heavier than normal sometimes. Yeah.
So and are you experiencing that now as well, or is it a bit less?
I mean, ever since we pulled food back a little bit, I've been a lot better. My appetite's still not like it used to be. Like I'm really not ever hungry.
Her weight finally stabilized.
Yeah, my weight's like at least stabilized now.
Yeah, it's not doing that up and down that it was before.
So I would just say take it from there, and don't do anything that's like intense. So like don't just like randomly raise calories by loads, or add loads of cardio. Just like do everything very gradually. Yeah, that's basically what I would say. Like obviously I'm not a doctor, but from listening to what your situation is, I think your background, your history is you've never stayed at one place consistently for longer than a certain amount of time. You've always been doing either either like dieting or not dieting, and everything is constantly changing. But if you just stay in the same place, that's like your body's always looking for homeostasis, which is like to be in one place.
Has to be,
yeah. And once you're in that place, you feel so good, because your body's like, I love this, I like being in a routine. So yeah, that's basically what I would do.
That helps.
Definitely. Just staying here. See what happens. But injury, cutting phase. Oh, the lats.
Oh, the lat thing. We had an episode that we never posted, and I remember telling Demetha about this, and she thought it was so interesting. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna wait until you watch Sammy on the video explaining it, because she put it really well. You remember how you taught me
that for the lat, it shouldn't be like right above you. You should kind of sit on the edge of the seat and have it in front of you a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Yeah.
And do you still believe in it? Because now you're doing like these courses. I don't know if your thought has changed or
we haven't covered that yet, but I can kind of touch on it. So first of all, you need to look at the way that a muscle is on your body. So if you look at your lat and if you want to stretch it, if you want to put it in its most lengthened position, it's not by putting your arm up, it's by putting it in front of you, because it kind of like comes like that.
like the fibers.
Yeah. If you look at a picture of someone, right, and like this is why it's sometimes good to actually take a skeleton or like have an app that shows you these things. But if you have someone just raise their hand and then put it here, it's actually in a more lengthened position when you're reaching in front of you. And that's basically why you get a better feeling, is because you're able to properly lengthen the muscle rather than putting it here. And then the other thing, two things I want to add to that is a mistake people make when they train their back is they retract their scapula and then they pull. But that is the worst thing you can do, because you need your scapula to be able to move through the movement. And if you contract it first, it's now stuck in that position. And where is it going to move from there? It can't.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if you look at me now, if I'm trying to like do this type of movement, right? But now I'm locking my scapula, how is this going to move? How is that muscle going to move if it can't
It's
do?
stuck. Yeah.
It's stuck. So that's one of the things that we actually learned on the course. And I
So
kind
to
of
like stretch in a row, and then instead of packing your shoulder block, like we're taught, just go like this and pull.
yeah. So you just
Okay.
want to have
Stretch.
movement of your scapula, because that's going to help you be able to actually contract.
Right.
And then the second thing is when you're doing a pull down, and I admit that I used to do this quite a lot. I used to like arch my back like this, and I would pull down like this. And the reason that's bad is because essentially when you're doing that, you're putting your shoulder blades like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want the best lat pull down technique, you actually want to kind of round your upper back.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
I do remember that you taught me that.
Yeah. So then when you do it, you're literally able to get full movement of that muscle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just these things that, again, like, you know, you see when you first get into the gym, you just look at what everyone else is doing.
And everybody's doing the traditional
Yeah.
back, full tail here.
And that all starts with just someone doing it one day, and then everyone does that, you know, and it kind of sucks, because I feel like a lot of PTs, like when I did my PT course, we're not taught this at all. And I think that it's really important to actually understand, like, how does the muscle attach on the body? What is its function? And once you start to understand those things, you then know how to train that muscle.
Right.
And it's like with glutes, this is the biggest thing that like I learned from this course. And I'm just like, wow, I feel like an idiot. So you know, when people squat and when they come to the top of the squat, they kind of like squeeze their glutes. Do you know what I'm talking
thrust
about?
forward. Have you seen that?
Yes.
So not only thrust forward, but just kind of like, even if it's not a massive thrust, they just kind of like squeeze their glutes.
Okay.
So where do you think your glutes get the most amount of activation in a squat?
I mean, it's in the hole, right?
Yeah, that's when they're in the most stretched position. So why would you come up to the top and then squeeze your? That doesn't do anything.
A little extra.
It literally doesn't do anything, because as soon as you've reached the top, that's it. It's done. It's not working anymore.
It's like resting right there.
So going from this to this, so literally you come up to the top, and then if you do that, you've moved your pelvis forward, but the muscle is exactly in the same position. Does that make sense? And I was like, that's actually so interesting. So then you start looking at other movements, you know, like when you see people do like all these donkey kicks and stuff, right? I think they're great for activation, but there's a reason why it's not the same as doing like a squat or a hip thrust. because you're not putting it through that whole range.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Yeah. Whereas like obviously with a squat, when you're at the bottom, imagine how much stretch you get on your glutes.
Yeah.
And that's why it's one of the best movements, or any type of squat variation, you know?
And another thing that you taught, and I've been seeing a lot on these two coaches that I follow, Coach Mark something and Coach Kasam, they're always posting how for the leg press or even for your squat stance, you don't need to go wide. Wide actually, is it your adductor? No, abductors.
Yeah,
Adductors.
adductors.
Yeah. It doesn't actually target your glutes. Narrow, like lines up the muscle fibers the best.
Yeah. So this is another thing, which is again like frustrating. Is like I have very narrow hips, like just naturally and genetically, my hips are very narrow.
Mhm.
And all these years I've been doing wide stance on everything. And guess what happens if you have narrow hips and you keep doing that? It's going to hurt the hip, obviously, because you're constantly, imagine placing like heavy loads and your legs are here when really this is the furthest you should be, you know? And now once I started doing close stance squats, I still feel my glutes, because to feel your glutes, it's about having your hips travel backwards rather than your knees. If you do knees forward, that's going to be more quads. If you do hips back, that's going to be more glutes, right? It's not
Right.
to do with the stance. But for some reason, again, it's one of those things that's just come about that if I go wide, I'm going to all of a sudden target my glutes.
Right.
I don't know why
So
that.
many people on Instagram saying that. So many athletes doing like wide stance everything.
That's literally what I was doing for like 5 years. And if you go and ask anyone in the gym right now, like, how do you target glutes? They'll just say wide. Just do
Wide.
wide. So yeah, but it's what I'm happy about is that, 10 years ago, this information wasn't out there. As in like people just did what they saw in the gym, but now there's just so much information coming out and you're able to access it really easy. And that's why you're getting better and better physiques, because people are able to use that research,
Yes.
So
Also,
yeah.
I just want to say I love the cable kickback, but the one that you taught me where it like travels in front of you and then you kick on a 30-degree angle, not straight in the back like you see a lot of girls do, not 45. It's like it's a different angle, but it hits the top
It's like
part of my glute. It's so
like
good.
back to the side. It's like instead of back, it's like kind of like to the side.
It's to the side. And I even do that with the reverse. Yeah, both of the kickbacks, one on the cable and one on a machine. But it's awesome.
Yeah, that's a really good movement. That's like probably one of the only kind of kickbacky movements that I would do.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan, and now when I've really kind of dissected that exercise, I'm just like, I'm never putting that in any of my client plans, especially because we've learned this on the course. They said if you want to train your glutes, you need to have your feet on the ground. Okay, so yes, that kind of contradicts what you just said about that kickback, but I think it's still good to do movements like that, because if it also helps build your muscle mind connection, you're going to see some progress, It's obviously not going to be the same as a hip thrust or a squat.
Of course.
But yeah, if you want to basically train your glutes to their maximum, you need to have your feet on the ground, both of your feet.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and so what was I going to say? Crap, I forgot what I was going to say.
Was it a kickback? No.
It was something I learned on the course about the kickback. I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Keep my feet on the ground.
Yeah, that if you want to get the maximum basically benefits, you want to keep both your feet on the ground. And it's kind of
I feel like I could target. I never felt the top of my glute like that in any other movement, even a hip thrust. No, it's always like middle. I feel the mid glute. I feel the lower glute. I never feel the top line.
Well, I guess it's more talking about like glute max and maybe glute med. Whereas I feel like the top of the glute is like, I'm not even sure what the muscle there is, but it's like going into your lower back kind of. Yeah. Yeah.
What else did we? Oh, Demita and I saw something. We wanted your opinion on this. So No Names top bodybuilder yesterday was doing a Q&A, and then someone asked him, what are your calories? And he's like, If you were to ask me my calories in any given moment, I would not be able to tell you because all I do is adjust my macros.
To be fair, I know what he means. I think it is quite stupid, but I think I know what he means by that. He basically means
to say like focus on macros, not calories, right?
No, I think what he means is like a lot, and this is what a lot of bodybuilders do. It's like when they're in prep, they have 4 meals a day. When they're in off season, they have 7. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the reason I know this is because the amount of times I've like had conversations like this with bodybuilders in my gym, and they're just like, yeah, I'm having 4 meals a day now. And I'm like, as opposed to, and they're like, oh yeah, when I'm in off season, I have like 7, 8 sometimes. Like I have to wake up at like 5 to have my first meal.
Yeah.
Or like someone I spoke to, they like wake up in the middle of the night to have a protein shake. And I'm just like,
this still exists.
I know, isn't it so funny that people do that?
So crazy.
But yeah, that's probably what he meant. But yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's like if you adjust your macros, you're adjusting your calories.
Exactly. Just do the calculation. Times 4 times 9. Done. There are your calories.
Yeah.
Funny.
Your thoughts on people coaching people?
Oh, you want to go on that?
Who don't have enough knowledge or...
It's so bad. There's this girl at our gym, again, no names because who knows who's going to watch this. I wish I could put a name out because it's very wrong. But there is a ex-competitor, not even a pro, coaching someone for her first show. And gave her the same plan, just gave her a plan, like didn't make any changes, didn't answer the girl for 2 weeks, put her on SARMs, yeah, and left her hanging, did not give her peak week protocol. She didn't know what to do.
So
how bad is that? And then she had the audacity to take a picture of the girl who was stepping on stage and said, so proud of my girl, when the girl didn't follow her plan. Like for the last 2 weeks, she found another coach. Yeah,
that's actually so messed up.
Does that happen in like the UK a lot? Do you have people who compete one time and they're like, I'm a coach, I can take you through prep?
The thing is, like, I think it happens everywhere. In the UK, it is a really small industry. Like everyone knows everyone.
Yeah.
Because honestly, when I say this, is kind of scary, but the size of England is like probably the size of New York, the state.
The state.
Do you know what I mean? Like England. I'm not talking about Scotland and Wales, but like
England. Yeah.
Yeah. But obviously you do get like people from Scotland who are part of the like it's called UK industry. UK includes obviously Scotland, Wales, Ireland, you know. But what I mean is like the whole size of the UK is like the size of a state in the US. Some states are bigger.
That's crazy.
So because of that, I feel like a lot less of this happens, because if you get found out, you're basically fucked, because you know everyone's going to know about it. Whereas I feel like in the US, it can just kind of slip because there's so many other people out there.
Yeah,
and no one will really.
That's true.
But yeah, it does happen, and I think it happens in there is a really sad story that happened in the UK where there was a guy who prepped a girl, and this guy, again, I'm not going to say names, and to be honest, I don't remember his name. But he was actually, I believe, a pro bodybuilder, and he prepped a girl and she died.
Stop.
Yeah, I'm being serious. I didn't know the details, but someone told me this, and I was just like, are you sure? Like, is this actually true? And apparently it is.
Was she using steroids or anything?
Yeah. So obviously it was to do with steroids for sure.
Yeah.
And it's just really sad because like it's irresponsible, and obviously, you know, if you're going to do stuff like that, then you need to make sure that you're getting blood work done, all that kind of stuff.
100%. That's so sad. We were listening to, there's this podcast that has no filter. What is it called? Leo and Longevity?
Yeah.
Something like that. I'm going to send it to you so you can see. They like rate physiques, talk about a bunch of coaches, best coaches, worst coaches. They say names. They don't care. But I'm not going to say any names, but it's crazy because they were talking about a coach who just does women physique competitors. And like what he puts them on and how like these
He's
things.
a famous coach. I think I know who it is.
Yeah, he is famous.
I think I know who it is. But anyway.
Starts with an S. Anyway, a girl that he was prepping for a Tampa Pro passed away because of diuretics. And like no one heard about this. That's not fair. And then he just posts about like, oh, great transformation, great blah blah blah, but doesn't talk about like
it's so sad.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's frustrating is like how easy it is these days to actually get access to all of these drugs, that it's almost, that's why it's kind of becoming a norm, because 10 years ago it was not only difficult to actually get access to them, but it was like really frowned upon, so like you didn't really get it as much.
Yeah.
And when you did, the girls usually did like physique and stuff, you know, so it was a lot more hardcore.
Right.
But now, because it's so easy to get access to them, you literally get like every other person doing some sort of steroid cycle in the gym, and some are not even like competing on like a high level. Like I would only consider it if I've literally done everything, like everything. But people just do it from day one because they're like, oh yeah, I just want to, you know, just want to look my best, so I'm just gonna start.
I feel like Bevs also, it's such an atmosphere where like you have the best in the world training there, right? Yeah. And the atmosphere is like everybody's big, everybody knows what they're doing. So I can imagine how a guy who's like just joining, even girls for that matter,
18, 19.
Yeah, 18, 19. That's why they're tempted to do something, because pretty much everybody who's there, competes, does something. So,
but I feel like as like a coach, wouldn't they know it's better to take years of lifting heavy and just building a base before even considering taking something?
That's what they should, but
yeah, but there's a reason why they don't, because this is the thing I don't like about the industry, and I think a lot of coaches are doing it for the wrong reasons. Like they're not doing it because they actually enjoy it. It's because they're like easy money, and they just have their athletes take stuff because they're going to look better.
So the more results that they can post.
Exactly. Right? That's literally what most coaches do. So it's a bit messed up, isn't it? But
that is.
Well, it's just the way.
I was thinking about that. Someone asked me recently, like, yeah, but how come you don't post more transformations on Automation? I'm like, dude, it takes time. Like I'll only post a girl after a year, maybe. I'm not gonna be posting every 3 months because not everybody is going through a fat loss phase like that, or it's not gonna happen that quickly.
The thing is, you're not a before and after coach. Like there are coaches who are just before and after. That's all they care about, right? But like half my clients, their goals are not even that, or they've like achieved like amazing results for them, but it's not going to be attractive for someone like, oh, they didn't even lose that much weight. It's like, because that wasn't the main goal. The main goal was like get a better relationship with food, build muscle, all that kind of stuff. And you're right, it takes time. And also not everyone wants to be posted on social media, which I totally understand.
That too. I have a handful of girls who are like, please don't ever use my pictures. And I'm like, shit, amazing, but I can't.
Exactly. So yeah, it's not only about the transformation, you know.
Yeah. All
Right.
right. Well,
are there any other questions?
I think we can end it here. We can have a part 2 soon.
No, I think it was really good. I think we got some pretty good questions answered.
Yes.
I need to also come up with some questions for Annabel, because I feel like it's always Annabel asking me. I need
asking you.
We can even have like a fun like Q&A. Like I saw someone do this actually the other day, but it's like, what is like Sammy's worst trait as a coach? Like, or like what's your best trait? And it's like, what's Annabelle's worst trait as a client?
I would love to do that. We should.
That'd be funny. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us. I'll be posting weekly, so please like, subscribe, and leave us any suggestions.
Yes, like, comment. If you guys have any ideas of who we should bring on, we'd be more than happy to. We're open to your suggestions. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.